Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different than usual, and I will be bringing you an actually useful guide. I know, I'm as shocked as you. Today's topic is going to be a breakdown of all the Farkle dice in Kingdom Come Deliverance, where I will explain what each die actually does, and touch on strategies to use them in. Basically, this guide should make you much better at Farkle, and you will know what to do with your giant dice collection in the game. So this one is for Sir Toby and Sexy Biscuit, the two people I've heard talk about this game more than everyone else in the world combined. So for starters, let's just quickly talk about how you get the special dice in Kingdom Come Deliverance. As you probably know, Henry magically always seems to have a cup of dice ready to go when challenged to a game of Farkle. Presumably he keeps these in his prison wallet, as I have never been able to find them anywhere else in his inventory. There is nothing special about these dice. However, you can obtain a ton of other types of dice that are special, and can really improve your Farkle game. There are various methods to obtaining these, primarily three. The first one worth mentioning is treasure hunts. Basically, all of these dice can be found spread out across Bohemia in the many treasure chests. If you would like to find those, I have actually made a series of guides that shows the location of each and every treasure chest, divided by region, making it the quickest way to get them all. You can also pickpocket a good deal of dice from NPCs around the map. The best people to target are people playing Farkle at taverns, in Ledechko, Rete, and Sasau, and of course the Inn on the Green. Lastly, there is a random encounter with a beggar who usually carries 3 or more special dice that seem to rotate randomly between encounters, and he will always have those on him so you can steal them via various methods, such as pickpocketing them or knocking him out. I suggest using a combination of these methods until you have all the dice that you could possibly need. So now that you have all the dice, that's great. But what do they all do? Sure, the descriptions give you a general idea of which ones are good and bad, but they are not overly specific, and pairing certain good dice with other good dice will not necessarily make a good hand, because you need to know what these puppies are up to. So let's break them down one at a time and explain what each dice type actually does. So the first die type we should go through are the even dies. The in-game description says, playing die loaded in favor of even numbers. So this one is actually pretty straightforward. These dice are loaded so that they are more likely to fall on the 2, 4, or 6 sides. Their specific weight distributions are as follows. Side 1 is 1, side 2 is 10, side 3 is 1, side 4 is 10, side 5 is 1, and side 6 is 10. Now, of course, these weights are not actual physical weights, because if they were, the opposites would be weighted differently if you know anything about loading dice. These are probability weights, so that will go throughout the entire list. Basically, if you have, like, one side, let's say 6 was weighted as 10 and all the rest are weighted as 1s, that means, statistically speaking, it should always land on the 6. Now, if it's spread up like this, it's equally likely to land on the 2, the 4, and the 6, and almost impossible to land on the 5, 3, or 1. But since it's it's a 1, not a 0, hypothetically it could still happen. It's just super, super improbable. So, with that in mind, this dice is almost useless on its own. But when multiples are used, it can be pretty good. A good thing to remember is that unless we are talking multiples, even numbers aren't really that good in Farkle. Sure, rolling 3 or more 6s will get you a ton of points, but using these dice is a good way to bust, since you're not very likely to roll 1s or 5s, which are the saving numbers in Farkle. This makes it pretty dangerous to play with these unless you've got a full hand of even dies, but generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend them if I'm being totally honest. The second die type to look at are the odd die, which have the description, playing die loaded in favor of odd numbers. So these ones have a higher chance to land on the odd numbers. Their specific weight distributions are as follows. Side 1 has 10, side 2 is 1, side 3 is 10, side 4 is 1, side 5 is 10, and side 6 is 1. So as you can probably already guess, these ones are better than the even ones, given the fact that the 1s and 5s are such an important part in playing Farkle. Adding any dice that increases the odds of rolling them is only ever going to help your hand. Like most dice on this list, their effect is better the more you have of them to roll. Like I said, these ones, unlike the even ones, are always a good thing to add to your hand because they're more likely to roll the 1s or the 5s. But obviously if you've got a whole cup full of them, they're going to be better off. Alright, so the third die type we're going to talk about today is the lucky die. This one has the in-game description of, when fortune smiles on you, smile back, otherwise you'll look suspicious. This one seems to only affect the die itself, and not any of the others, but will often roll towards numbers that should earn points. The weight distribution is as follows. Side 1 is 2, side 2 is 0, side 3 is 1, side 4 is 1, side 5 is 1, and side 6 is 4. So this one is generally seen as a good die to have in your hand, especially if you have nothing better. Since 2s are generally a useless number to roll, this die is good, as it should never land on a 2. It should most often land on a 1, or even more often than that, a 6. However, its effects are minimal, and will not seem much different than these standard dice. The fourth type of dice are the lucky playing dies, not to be mistaken for the last ones we talked about. These ones are probably the dice I use most often. These ones have the in-game description that says, a playing die that brings luck more often than you'd expect. These ones are similar to the last, but weighted more effectively towards your top earners. The weight distribution of these dice are as follows. Side 1 is weighted to 7, side 2 is 1, side 3 is 2, side 4 is 3, side 5 is 4, and side 6 is 7. In summary, these ones are more likely to roll a 1 or a 6 than any other number. Yet, they are also weighted so that they are also statistically more likely to land on the other numbers based on value. So you're very unlikely to roll a 2 or a 3. Overall, these dice will help nearly any batch you set up, and are great when using in multiples. This is one that many people have likely seen me use in a playthrough where I'll use a full 6 dice, all lucky playing dice, because they're one of the ones that you can actually find that many in the game, and if you've got a whole handful of them, it's almost unstoppable. Next up, we have Henry's Beta Die. The description says, a playing die that Henry secretly made to bring him luck in love, which is why he'd rather not use it to gamble with. This one is not overly useful, as its weight distribution is 1 to every side except for 2, which is weighted to 10. Basically, this die will almost always roll a 2, so unless you're trying to build a hand that will roll straights all the time, and you need one that's going to roll a 2, this one is not a good die to add to most hands. Generally speaking, I recommend avoiding Henry's Beta Die. Then there are the Heavenly Kingdom Die. Their in-game description says, a miraculous playing die, sent from the Heavenly Kingdom to the Kingdom of Men. These dice are missing the number 6, instead replacing it with what I believe was Warhorse Studios' early logo. This way, you can never roll the evil 666 that all good Christians should try to avoid. When you land on the symbol, it does act as a 6 though, and these dice will land on it a lot, as it is only weighted to side 1, which has a weight value of 10, and side 6, which has a weight value of 5. All the rest have weight values of 0, so hypothetically you should never roll a 2 through a 5 on the Heavenly Kingdom die. These are good dice to add to most hands and excellent when multiplied. Next, we'll talk about the polar opposite to the last dice, which were the Heavenly, and we will now discuss 3 unique dice that are named Lugh, C, and Fer. Their descriptions label them as the first, second, and third in the line of demonic dice. These dice are weighted to land on side 6, so you can aim for the high-scoring, yet immortally damning 666 rolls. These dice will often yield a 6, as the sides are weighted 1 for sides 1 through 5, and 10 for side 6. So unlike the Heavenly Kingdom die, these ones do have a chance to land on all of the off numbers. It is just very, very low, and they don't split the odds with 1. Again, these dice are good with most hand types, and even better when stacked, and oddly enough, work pretty well when paired with the Heavenly Kingdom die, especially in multiples. Then of course there is the Strip die, which, as far as I know, can only be obtained from the bath wench in the mission where Henry and Hans Kapan drink and lay about for a night. This die has the description that says, legend had it that this die can strip more than one maiden. This one is not very special, but won't hurt your hand if you don't have any better dice to use. Its official weight distribution is as follows. Side 1 is 3, side 2 is 1, side 3 is 1, side 4 is 1, side 5 is 1, and side 6 is 2. So you can probably tell it will land on a 1 or a 6 slightly more often than a normal die, but not enough to make it worth a spot that a better die could fill. I believe there is only one of these in the game, so while I would call it a positive addition, that's really only if you have nothing else that's going to be better than this one. Next, there is the Unpopular Dye. This one's description says, sometimes the dice fall well, sometimes not. This one, probably not. Basically, this one is weighted to roll a 3 or less, but most often a 3. Its weight distribution is as follows. Side 1 is 7, side 2 is 5, side 3 is 10. Then sides 4 through 6 are only weighted 1. So unless you really want a die that will most often roll a 3, such as going for a straight run, then this die is almost always a negative one to have in your hand. Another generally bad die to use is the biased die. This one's description says, a playing die someone tried to load to their advantage, but they didn't do a very good job. That description pretty much says it all. This one is weighted towards 1, 2, and 6, suggesting that the maker wanted it to be the one that rolled 1s and 6s, the best numbers in the game. However, it is weighted heaviest towards the 2, making it less than useful. Side 1 on this die has a weight value of 3. Side 6 has a weight value of 2, and side 2 has a weight value of 4. Sides 3, 4, and 5 are all weighted at 1. So this one is mostly just a dud, that will more often than not land on the least useful side of 2. Our last commonly thought of as negative die type is the Die of Misfortune, which sounds pretty bad, and is, but not quite as bad as the last two. This one's description says, a playing die that you'd be better off throwing as far away as possible, which is pretty dramatic for a die that is simply weighted to roll a 2 through a 5. Its weight distribution is as follows. Side 1 is 1, side 2 is 5, side 3 is 5, side 4 is 5, and side 5 is 5, and then side 6 is weighted at 1. So obviously this one isn't ideal, as the best numbers to roll are 1s and 6s, and this one will not land on them very often. In addition to this, it is equally likely to land on 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, making it pretty unlikely that it will land on a 5 and be useful. Overall, I recommend avoiding these dice as much as possible. Lastly, we have the Shrinking Playing Die. The in-game description for this die is as follows. One of the few properly loaded dice, loaded in favor of its holder. This one is nothing too special, but is usually a positive one to have if you have nothing better. It is a normal weight distribution for the most part, but side 1 has a weight value of 2, and side 6 has a weight value of 3. So it is slightly more likely to land on these two numbers than the rest. But this will only offer a marginal difference to the stock die that you'd have otherwise. There are a few other die types in the game that I'm aware of, most not really worth mentioning, or I couldn't find them when I was preparing to make this video. So the first one we can talk about is the Devil's Head die, which can be looted from the Ledeshko player in the Amorous Adventures of the Bold Sir Hans Capon DLC. These ones have a side that acts as a wild side, making it easier to use for multiples, but other than that, they seem to be normally weighted. There is also Alphonse's die, which, other than looking cool, doesn't seem to do anything. There's also, I think, I remember the Commonest die, but I think it just rolled like a regular die. So this is a pretty comprehensive list of all the special die that you'll run into in the game. So if you want to make a good hand out of these dice, I've tried several different combinations with decent success. The first one that I use most often, as soon as I can, is all lucky playing dice. This one works very well, and will have you rolling straight 6s or 1s or a combination of the two that will allow you to roll and re-roll over and over more often than not. I've used this hand to roll upwards of 20,000 points before my opponent gets a turn. As far as combinations go, the Lugh C Fer dice, paired with 2 or 3 Heavenly Kingdom dice, also works rather well, as it will almost always roll you a 666 or better, and you have the backup of the Heavenly Kingdom dice rolling 1s very often to keep you from busting. If you want to use either the even or the odd dice, I recommend using a full hand of them, as this will give you the best odds of winning with them. But be warned that if you go that route with the even dice, you have almost a 50% chance of busting on any given roll. So it is risky, but I've also had very high scoring rounds with that method. Well, that does it for this guide. I hope it has clarified things a little bit and made the in-game dice system and the game of Farkle that much more understandable and enjoyable for all of you. I hope you enjoyed this video and or found it useful. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.